Now is Raywat Deonandan. He's an epidemiologist at the University of Ottawa and one of our regular guests whenever we want to chat about various COVID-19 topics. Raywat, I know that with you and with other people on this show, we've spoken many times about the importance of masks. And one of the things that I've noticed, especially since we've moved downtown, CJOB has moved downtown, is that when I board the bus, which is something I didn't have to do until recently, very few people here in Winnipeg, at least, are wearing masks. And I would think that in an enclosed area like a bus, even if the bus isn't crammed, it would be especially important to wear a mask in those settings. So, Raywat, I would like to get your thoughts on this. Is it important to wear a mask in an area like a bus, or am I getting some of my facts wrong?
No, you're exactly right. That's exactly when you're supposed to wear a mask in an enclosed, indoor-ish environment like a vehicle or a home or a place of business. Now, the reason for wearing a mask, to reiterate what I've been trying to say in many venues, is that it is a windbreak that prevents the respiratory droplets from going more than a couple of centimeters past your face. That's all it is. So if enough people wear a mask most of the time, even improperly, then when it's scaled up to the population level, the transmission is diminished in the community and everyone can enjoy open economy longer.
But it becomes a situation where, in particular, when we're dealing with schools, not even the experts can agree.
Sick Kids' June report outright rejected students wearing masks to school, but medical experts now appear to be changing their tune, noting they have a considerable disagreement on the protocol. It now recommends high school students wear masks when physical distancing can't be maintained, with consideration for those in middle school. But elementary students should not wear them. They should instead avoid mixing with students in other classrooms and physical distance where possible.
There is a lack of evidence on this topic, and that is why there was an ongoing lack of consensus.
McMaster's Dr. Jeffrey Pernica says more research is needed.
It may not decrease infectivity if children don't wear them right. And in fact, we don't even know if it will increase infectiousness of a given person.
Brianna Carnegie, Global News.
So, Raywat, that is the researchers from Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. They should know what they're talking about, but even they can't agree. So where do you land on what that doctor had to say?
I think that argument is ridiculous. And the reason it's ridiculous is the age-old argument that with insufficient evidence we can't act. But in fact, when you have a public health emergency, you act on what is best for the precautionary principle. So this argument that it may increase infection, that's based on this assumption that, if you touch it improperly, then you're spreading it to different places. That's an old paradigm based on what we experience in hospitals, where the virus is all around us. And I keep trying to get my medical colleagues to get out of this clinical way of thinking. We're not talking about hospitals here. We're talking about the community, especially when the incidence and prevalence is low in the community. Anytime you have any kind of fabric over your face, however improperly used, even if you're fidgeting with it, it will help in the long run. Now, I've asked my friends on social media, parents and teachers, if they think elementary students can wear masks. 100% of them feel that they can be taught to do so. Now, the arguments against it, as I mentioned, are, dubious to my mind, but also that the kids can't be taught to use them well. I think they can be. But if they can't, then we need to invest in other strategies like having smaller class sizes and larger rooms for spacing, and maybe have the kids wear face shields instead of masks. There are lots of options here, and it concerns me that not all the options are being explored.
You know what's interesting, Raywat, and you kind of touched on it a little bit there, is you mentioned how you think some of your colleagues need to get out of this, I guess, really strict sort of clinical way of thinking. And it reminds me of, and please correct me if I'm wrong regarding this, but when researchers, I think it was in Germany, who started taking a look at months ago, taking a look at the effects of masks on people, and I can't recall exactly, but I think there was something that was a little bit off with the study, but overall, the findings of the study were saying that masks could potentially be very helpful, but the World Health Organization and several other scientists out there kind of, don't want to say condemned it, but criticized it at least, because there was this one little factor about it that was not accurate. Now, I'm certainly not saying we should fudge studies to fit within a certain viewpoint, if you will, But it does seem like part of what held us back from this, especially from public health officials, is that we were disagreeing on the wrong things that at the end of the day didn't necessarily mean a whole lot when it came to the average person out there listening to this. So do we need to really kind of keep in mind that, hey, it's called public health for a reason?
That's a really good way of looking at it. With this pandemic, people get to see how the sausage is made with science. They get to see the disagreements among scientists. In medical science in particular, there's been an ongoing disagreement about what the threshold for action needs to be in terms of evidence. We have this thing called evidence-based medicine, in which we wait until the absolute very best studies are in before we prescribe a drug or change a course of therapy. That's great when you got time. When you've got a public health emergency, the threshold for action is diminished. That's why we went into lockdown before we fully understood this disease. And it's probably a good thing that we did. Whereas some people are saying, well, we don't know fully yet. We should wait until we make such a big move. But the cost would be a lot of death. So the cost here, if we're wrong about the mask wearing, is, people wear masks, big deal. The cost, if we're right about it, we don't act on it, is that some children might die. So the price of failing to act is actually too high not to take it seriously. So, yeah, people don't fully grasp this public health idea. It's not evidence-based medicine. It's public health emergency medicine. It's quite different. And I'm sorry if I sound frustrated, but it's interesting that there is a little slight disagreement between epidemiologists and infectious disease doctors. They're stuck in a clinical paradigm talking about masks as personal protective equipment to be used in hospitals. That's not what this is. This is a piece of cloth over your mouth that slows down the rate of transmission of the fluids coming out of your mouth. That's all it is. You can touch your face. You can crumple up the mask in your pocket. You can sometimes forget to wear it. That happens. But on average, if enough people do it most of the time, even improperly, it'll create great dividends for the community.
And I think at the beginning that there was a lot of hesitancy because officials didn't believe that, well, Canadians or anyone else could figure out how to get a mask on their face without buying all of the surgical ones that were in such short supply. But now as a new dad, could you see how if schools don't mandate masks, for example, that you're going to see a bullying situation when they make it optional, as they have in Manitoba, where, you got one parent who says, you got to wear that thing, and then the next parent that says, nah, don't worry about it. Now you have issues on the school ground.
Oh, 100%. And when you've got wishy-washy policy making like this, what you do is exacerbate social divides that already exist. If you've got wishy-washy policies around who gets to stay home and go to work, who gets to go to work, then you got the poorest families have to send their kids to school, and the rich families get to keep their kids at home. So we have this problem with policies constantly exacerbating already existing divides. And in the classroom, as you mentioned, if you've got a power dynamic between the bullied kids and the bullies, that's going to be exacerbated as well. So these policies have to take into consideration the sociological dimension as well, which is why I think the mask should be mandatory, even for younger kids. Maybe not as young as like 4. That might be a bit of a stretch. But that's for the child psychologist to decide. But certainly, like 5, 6, 7, I think it's certainly possible. At the very least, face shields. Face shields are comfortable. You can see each other. You can communicate. You can probably even touch your face if you want to. This is not about transferring infection from surfaces to your face. This is, I'll say it again, about diminishing the distance that your breath can travel. That's all it is. And people are overthinking this way too much.
So when we look back on the conversation here we just had, Raywat, at the end of the day, quite simply, do we need to mandate masks in all indoor areas, buses, public schools, wherever that may be, where there's the potential for close contact?
100%. And here's why. Around the world, we're seeing a resurgence of cases. This disease can manifest and reassert itself quite quickly. We need every tool in the box deployed, even a mask that costs you pennies. So this is a cheap and easy way for every citizen to be involved in trying to keep the community safe. And it strikes me as a bit of a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you try it? The price of doing it is minuscule. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Big deal. If it works, we're keeping the economy open. We're saving lives. The return on investment can be enormous, and the price is minuscule.
Well, Raywat, we always appreciate having you on, and we hope that this has been a bit cathartic so that you can get some of that frustration off your chest so that you can enjoy your long weekend.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Raywat Deonandan is a University of Ottawa professor and epidemiologist, and he is our house epidemiologist here, Tristan, on 680 CJOB.